Gossip Talk Show's family is Namsa here at Gossip Talk Shows. Find your own voice, lead from within. So, with me today, I'm with Dr. Bigot. How are you, Dr. Bigot?
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. Good afternoon, Numsa. I'm doing very well. Thank you. And you?
I'm very well, thank you. So, the topic today is hidden signs of grief, how to recognize and heal in unexpected ways. Grief often hides behind the scenes, showing up in ways that we might not immediately associate with loss. It's a deeply personal journey, and its signs can manifest subtly, even when we might not realize we are grieving. So, today we are going to share some hidden signs of grief and ways to acknowledge and heal them. Dr. Pickett, what do you think about the topic?
Thank you, Numsa. For me as a grief coach, I feel it is an important topic because it's one of those, as a grief coach and with my background perhaps in medicine as well, I feel it's an important topic, partly because people might not be feeling well, and if they don't know what's going on, so in other words, if what they feel they are this way or that way because of this way or that way, but the truth is it's an expression or a manifestation of grief and they don't know what's going on. Well, when we don't really know the cause of what's going on, then we might not be able to address it properly. So one example I would use for this is, let's say somebody started having a physical problem, somebody becoming more and more and more forgetful. Now there are multiple different reasons of being forgetful, but if that person's problem or the person forgetfulness come from incompletely uh, resolve grief, that they have not completely recovered from their grief and trauma, they might say, "Oh, I'm gonna go play, do brain exercise. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that." All along, not knowing what it's in the term of medicines. We don't know what the heck we're treating. We're just treating the symptoms, and when you're only treating the symptoms, you keep chasing the symptoms, and you're not going to be able to fully completely eliminate it. And usually over time it just get worse and worse and worse because you're still not treating the source and the cause of it. And with grief, we know that grief, based according to the Grief Recovery Institute, which is an institute that uses evidence-based method to help people with grief, we know that grief is cumulative and cumulatively destructive. So let's say you experience something, a forgetfulness. You don't know what it is. You go around and you're still not getting better. And the definition of grief by the Institute is the unsettled feeling caused by a change, unmet hope, or a loss. So in that example, you try to treat it, not knowing it is grief, and you're not getting the result you want. So that will be an unmet hope because anybody doing any form of treatment, they would want to be able to receive a result they want. So now you're grieving even more. And grief is cumulative, cumulatively it's destructive. So not only you are already experiencing afflictions from grief, you try to treat it, but not knowing it's actually grief. So you're probably doing some all other things but addressing it, and now you're not receiving the result you want. You grieve even more. It's exacerbate the symptoms you're already feeling, or add new symptoms, and then you grieve even more. It's become a vicious cycle that people get trapped, which is really heartbreaking. And so I feel it's really good and important to know. You're muted.
I like it, Dr. Bigot, when you say when someone is being forgetful and stuff, because it can happen when somebody is grieving and then it affecting their brain and stuff. So it's really, really important for people to actually be aware of their physically symptoms that can affect their bodies, or like, and also the aches and all these things, sleep disturbance as well. And I'm sure it does affect the immune system as well, right? When the grief is, when there's a hidden grief as well, because when you're holding stress, so it can affect it can affect your body and everything. So if somebody, like, they're not sure whether they are grieving, how can they, if someone, let's say, is in denial, how can they then really truly, like a family, how can they help that person? Is it possible to help them, or do you just leave them alone? How do you approach the situation?
Okay. So great questions, awesome questions. And with that, there are a couple questions in there. The first one, you indirectly asked, it's can it affect the immune system as well? Yes, grief is known to affect the body, the immune system. Grief is actually a form of severe stress to your body, regardless when it happened, what have you. It is a form of stress, no different than if you are stressed because say something happened in your neighborhood. Let's say there is a fire, or there is something happen in your neighborhood or at work. And truly, the true definition of grief is the unsettled feeling caused by a change, unmet hope, or a loss. So loss, most people think about grief from a loss, which is the death, divorce, loss of job, and dire diagnosis, which is loss of health. But even if it is, so when there was a few years back, when there was the pandemic, a lot of people end up getting ill. People who were initially healthy, yes, there was the pandemic, but people also become ill because in multiple different way, but including physically, or people who has physical illness already, unfortunately, suddenly has a recurrence of them or exacerbation of them, because that's an unmet hope. Who live around and expect to be locked down, and that's a change that we did not expect, and so loss of ease, loss of comfort, and any of those, and this is including I live in an area with a lot of wildfire, and anytime there is an evacuation order, which at some point it was every year I had to evacuate my house because of wildfire in California, that is a form of grief. That can be a form of grief. And anytime some cause of grief happen, it is a significant stress in our body. The body read it as huge stress response. And most of us know what stress do to our body. It causes the compromised immune system. It induces, and we speak about this briefly a couple of weeks back, I believe, Numsa, on the show. I believe it was a couple of weeks back, of what grief
Yes,
does to the
yes, we did. Yes.
what grief does to the brain. And one thing that does grief, not strictly to the brain but the whole nervous system, is the hypothalamus axis. The hypothalamus, we mentioned different things, but grief also affected our hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus pituitary axis system, which is our fight or flight system, got triggered. And so when you're grieving, you might not realize this, but over time, people start having things like panic attack. But it's also in their body, in their physical, where they have decreased immune system and a lot of cardiovascular problem. Because if you are in a stress state continuously for years, for months, for years, for decades, guess what happened? It's going to take a toll on your heart, on your blood pressure, on your muscle, because you subconsciously tense. I have one client who says, you know what? I did not realize that I had been tense for longer than I could imagine. After she worked with me for I do coaching, so it's not therapy, but after she wasn't even finished with the coaching, she said, wow, I just realized how much I had all this back pain and neck pain and shoulder pain, and I didn't realize, because all this time I was so tense. It's like, you teach me and you teach me, and then like she's like, oh God, I finally feel that I can move my back. Can you imagine this? Decades. And so that's it's affected our immune system, and way more than that. How do people if your loved one does not want to know that they are grieving, and you're like, I think you might be grieving here. Again, there are other causes of all this, right? But if you say, okay, this happened, and then all this started to happen. One client have that experience with her significant other, and she didn't want to hear about it. A couple things you could do. If it is a family experience and you also possibly be grieving, then you be the example. The first is you be the example. I have so many times people come to me and they work with me, and then the family members start saying, wow, what changed you? Oh, wow, you're no longer this way, and you're no longer that way, and you're no longer this way, no longer that way. What are you doing? And then that's when you share. And you share it. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. But with me, number one, some people have stigma about therapy. So most people in that scenario know, as my client, they know to say, oh, I take a class. Because coaching is really, it's like a small group or a private class, like a tutoring, really. I take a class about managing grief and stress and life, and releasing the loss that we had experienced, so it doesn't haunt us. People say, oh, take a class, all right, that's not so bad. It's not so it's not as much of a stigma. Okay. And so that's one thing. You fix you, and you will be able, or you take care of you, you'll be able to take care of others. So that's number one. And then the other way you could, for people who does not want to hear that they are grieving, uh, is to notice what's going on with them. And let's say you look at the forgetfulness, and then, or the physical illness started to come, start having migraine, starting having this or something that. A very common expression of grief is irritable and moody. So they're not sad. This is particularly happen if the person is a high accomplisher, or they are the gentlemen is more common to express this. Is irritable, moody, or they keep trying to stay busy. They run from thing to thing to thing, not because what have you, but you kind of notice that they just keep looking for something to do. These are a couple other common expressions of grief, or they suddenly acted like they don't care and they don't feel anything. So you start sharing them information. You start sharing them informations. One person's one family help their father recognize, because they start playing movie. They pull out the TED talk by Dr. Sandeep Johar. He talked about heart attack, and this gentleman, the father, did heart attack after one of their siblings, so after his daughter passed. And so they pull up his talk and happen to be watching it when daddy's around. And then they pull out some other information. They ask information from me, one of them worked with me, and they said, so, these are what dad's showing. I said, okay, it's not all from me. You can, there is this, that, there is this, that. And so you just happen to be, interesting, or you know somebody who is experiencing the same thing. So forgetfulness, let's say we talk about forgetfulness and anger. You can say, hey, that neighbor who is experiencing this, well, turn out it was all coming from grief. So it is something that might take a little effort. It is easiest when you be the example. And at the same time, just know you cannot come to somebody and say, hey, you're grieving. Nobody wants to be told they're grieving. There is something about people that it appalls them when they are told, in most cases. It appalls them when they are being told that they are grieving. And if they're already in denial, they don't want to hear about it. It will only push them farther from you and make it more difficult to help them. So please don't come to someone and say, you know what, you really got to listen to me, and you grieving, you got to go see what have you. They if they don't want to hear it, it will only push them away from you.
I like it, Dr. Bickett, when you say family experiences, sometimes they can actually make you feel that you are grieving. And you're saying, notice what is going on within, like your body and stuff. Like myself, I've lost my father-in-law. And just before I came alive, I just had that my granddad had a stroke. So I think there's part of me that has been, I think I've grieved for my father-in-law when he wasn't well. I came to accept it and stuff. Because I've realized now that he's gone, I've had that closure, just watching his journey from the beginning. And but I think if I wasn't closer to him, I think he would have his death would have affected me. But I just felt that I watched the whole the transformation of his life, and at first it was hard. But then I came to realize that actually that's the journey where he is going. So I'm going to have to come to terms with it. So I came to accept that. But I made sure that I do everything that I can to be there for him, so that whatever happens, I don't have any regrets. So I was thinking about it yesterday that actually my job is done now. Now that is gone, and his funeral, when it comes next week, I'm gonna be sad, but not that sadness of like really. I'm gonna be sad that I'm not gonna get phone calls and stuff, but I think I'm just like understanding that now he's gone. And but it's not an easy thing today. It's just hard. It's really, really hard because when you are with somebody and then all of a suddenly you find yourself like he's not there anymore. And also I try to give myself that permission to pause and reflect about life. And most of the times, like my father-in-law, when it comes to my relationship, he was my cheerleader, like with the girls and stuff. He was really, really that man. Like he'll be like, if anything, whatever happens, Just let me know I'm on the other side, although he was calling me every minute, every second. Everyone else was ignoring him, but I never ignored him. I'll be like, okay, I'm working from home, just pop around. Or if sometimes if I'm not in the office, it will just pop around and come and fall asleep on the chair. But I think those memories that we cherish. But how do you actually, like as a grief coach, how do you move on from that life where, okay, this is the unknown, because the unknown is me living without him now. So I'm not going to talk too much because the grieving thing is not really my thing. So how do you move on from that place where, okay, this is the grief and saying goodbye, and then starting the unknown and new chapter without that person?
Great question. So one thing that many people who deeply affected by grief, intensely affected by grief, and including myself, this is one of the very common myth that is in the society, and that is you really don't move on or get over. Some people even say get over the loss. How do you move on? You move through and move forward. There is a difference. There's a slight difference in there. Particularly get over. It's almost like you jump through things. And even move on, sometimes there's an implication you just get going, so to say. Move on, get on. But you move through. With grief, you cannot. People come to me and say, "So I'm going to get over this quick." I say, "No, no, 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 no. If that's what your expectation, almost like I'm going to give you a pill and then you'll be all good." That is not. I will help you move through it, and I will help you move forward from it. And so that is one thing that you want to do. Once you grieve through grieving, where you lost a loved one, or there is a trauma happen or something, it will and what so it let's say it's not a passing of a loved one, but you are in a horrific accidents. Once you grieve in that way, it will change you forever. And at the same time, it is up to you which direction you want to change. Would you change to be doom and gloom and bitter, or allowing of all these manifestations we talk about just now, all the different ways of grief, even if you no longer feel the intense sadness, physical illness, emotional inability to success start affecting your success and so forth, all this to afflict you? Or are you going to use the grief to honor your loved one, and to be in the mindset coaching realm? The people say you choose to be better or bitter, and to a degree, it how you move through and beyond, you are going to, whatever happen, it will help empower you, even if it is very painful at the moment. And everybody really is different, Numsa, how you move through. In general, if you feel that you don't exactly know how, it's always smart. It's kind of like if you want to go, I'm giving an example, you want to drive from Los Angeles to New York, but if you want to drive in the UK from one place to another and you have no idea how to get there, you might just want to get a map. And in this day and age, you can choose to get those old-fashioned paper map. Anybody still have them? Or anybody still use them? The old-fashioned paper map. Here in the US, we used to have you have them in a book about that thick. And this is just for one state, and you got to like look at them and think. So you can use that on this in this day and age. You can say, you know what, it's a lot better and a lot faster and a lot easier if I got a GPS on your phone or somewhere, but you want to get something and somebody to help you. And then if you got a map and you got a GPS, and then you're like, I still get lost, then you might want to have somebody who has been through the road and know the back road, because maybe perhaps there are road closure, get in the car with you and help you drive there. So if to receive help, and the reason for that is I there are the common way of receiving help, and that help could be therapy, it could be grief coaching, but everybody's different. Therapy does not work for everybody. Most people who come to me has tried therapy for anywhere between 6 months to 60 years, and it did not completely help them. I even have a few people who was fired by therapists. The therapist said, "You're fine. You don't need anything. You don't need anything from me." Something in her know, something in these people's know that there is something else left. All of these people come to me for most of them physical symptoms. So in other words, they didn't come to me saying, I'm grieving. They didn't come to me saying, I have panic attack, even though one of them does have anxiety, but they come to me for physical symptoms. One with cancer, and then two with chronic illness. Somebody else come with a couple other people actually come and say, I keep getting stuck. In other words, they went to therapy, they went through mindset coaching, and they keep hitting what we call glass ceiling. They succeed, fall back down, succeed, fall back down, and it's like I keep getting stuck. And I've done therapy, I've done mindset coaching, I've done meditations, whatever you name it. I just want to try this. Sure enough, these people's it's been years, so they show after that they move through whatever keeping them stuck. But anyhow, so everybody's different because of that. Everybody's different. Some of the people help by therapy, and some help by different thing. But how you want to look for help, go with somebody you can trust, and if it doesn't work after some time, try something different. In my background in medicine as a doctor, if somebody has, say, an infections and it doesn't work, not everybody does this, but I do. Then send them for second opinion. So if the person you're working with do not send you for second opinion, and it doesn't work, get yourself a second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion. You keep trying something different. Do not give up. And because some people works with different method. I have one client who the thing that worked the best for him was the music therapy, music and movement therapy. This is something common with childhood trauma and certain type of trauma.
I like it, Dr. Pickett, when you actually saying go work through it, the grieving. But how do people go from grieving to bitterness? Like,
Grieving to bitterness.
yeah.
So
What makes that person decide to actually, or people are different, to go to, instead of they grieve and then go to bitterness?
So that's a great question. Partly it's because somebody's own choice. In other words, some people, when something happens, they are proactive. It's a little bit to the person personality, the person willingness to receive help. And so some people actually something happen, they are proactive. I have people. It is very interesting to see. This is not alienating against anybody, but people who are highly successful, high level attorney, executive, highly successful entrepreneur, highly successful physicians, and so on and so on and so forth. They're very proactive people. Something happened, They sit in there and they try to, something happen, they try to get to take care of it immediately. They're very proactive people. Something happened, they try to fix it, and they give themselves, let's say I have many attorneys and physicians do this. They said, okay, first thing, that is what they know, they went to therapy. They go to therapy, and then they said, okay, and somewhere in the back of their mind they usually say, so this is going to help me in 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year, they're not in much better place, or they're in worse place, because grief cumulatively is destructive. They said, all right, time to find something else. And they're proactive. They keep searching, and they keep looking. So it's a little bit of people personality to a degree, in that you want to allow, but this is something that everybody can learn. You don't have to wait until everything's really bad to receive help. And so that's one, is how you choose to be better versus becoming worse and bitter. Now, if you do not do what it takes, what you are able to, and this is something interestingly I see in family. You are asking just now, a lot of many times it is one person, and this is perhaps an experience they've been having for years, right? And it's not always something happened last month. They have been having for years. It's usually that one person that thrives going from therapy, this, and a therapy, mindset coaching, that, and then trying EMDR and trying CBT, and and then it doesn't work. And it is also that person that keep trying, while the rest of the family just fun and say, no, 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 it's just you were fine. While the moment they, I mean, even their therapists know, even their physicians know, and the moment they talk with me, they said, so that one experiencing that, usually many of these people come to me through public presentation, and they said, oh my gosh, so my husband experiencing ABC, and my son experiencing this and that, and my sister-in-law experiencing XYZ. It comes right from your list. And so I said, okay, well, guess what? You change. You change. You have tried therapy and this and that, doesn't matter. You change and see what happens. And then it's usually the sister-in-law and then the husband, and then slowly they started to move to participate. So that is something that the people can do, is to do that. But are you there? Is everything okay, Numsa? Hello, is everything okay?
My oldest daughter, she wanted me to open the door for her.
Okay. So okay, I just want to make sure you didn't fall over or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, I need to find out more. Do therapists really fire clients?
What's that?
You mentioned when you were speaking, you mentioned that you have some clients that have been fired by therapists and stuff.
Yeah, and what's the question?
Do they fire them because they feel that they've helped them, or is it because they feel that they can't help them?
No, they feel they help them.
Really?
These people say, no, 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 you are fine now. No, 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 no. There's, well, either they feel they help them, or they feel that there is nothing else they can do.
All
In other
right.
words, they do. So it's come in both cases. Some people, they have their the therapists work with them and say, no, and these are people who usually very good. The physical illness one usually are the one that is fired because they are fine. If the therapist said, you're fine. And some of these people are the most, talking about bitter, some of these people are the most positive people. They're very okay, I cannot breathe, but I'm very positive. Life is good otherwise. Yes, I have cancer, but life is, look at all these things to be grateful. So they're very good in their mind, but there is something in their heart. And we know, we mentioned briefly in the last talk, grief got somatized. So this is something happened many times a while back, got into their system. In the meantime, as a survival, they have learned to be positive. And so, and even though we know that grief affected your brain in such a way that it can make you negative, so to say, it can make you very turn bitter over time. For many people, the grief can do that. It's make you kind of just becoming bitter and have a doom and gloom outlook in life. So some people, and some people are fired by therapists because of that, because they just I said grief makes people as if they're wearing a dark sunglasses all the time, and then people say you're just so negative, you're just so negative. And then some even have the therapist or the mindset coach saying you're just a negative person, you just need to change your outlook and start being positive, but not knowing that there is an incompletely resolved grief in there. And these people, uh, they try, and the moment you it is very heartbreaking actually, because the moment I speak with them, and they feel, I usually they probably feel something, and they immediately say, I just want to, but Dr. Tan, I try to be positive, I know I need to be positive, and I just can't. And usually these ones are the ones that I don't know if the people who work with them know before. They usually, by the time they come to me, they're at the last straw. They're ready to take themselves out, which is really, really heartbreaking. And it is something that, yeah, but sometimes it's they're fired because the therapists feel they're fine, or think they are fine, or the coach think they're fine. And but usually, the other time actually they more like, there are they said, you just need, you should just go to psychiatry. Usually that's what happened. In other words, they not immediately say get out of of my way, but go to psychiatry. You'll be better helped by psychiatry. Oh, I myself was fired by therapists long ago. I was spinning around. This was before I've experienced grief since I was very young, probably about 5. And so at the beginning, I did what everybody else do. Hello, you're in school, you go there to therapy, and then eventually I have one therapy says, you know, we see you tried this and that. I mean, yes, we what you need to do is you should just go to psychiatrist, stay with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrists try one after another medications, and none of them exactly help me. They all cause problem, and that's actually really when I say, and I end up, of all those things, I end up passing out driving, talking about the unknown part of grief, right? The symptoms. I passed out driving. Anybody here from happen to be on a very busy freeway? It's like one of the most known busy freeway here in Los Angeles area. People who's been here, it's the 101 freeway. I passed out driving on that freeway. This is after therapy, after psychiatry, after mindfulness practice, meditation, yada yada. And I said, hmm, okay. And by then, and then I went back to therapy after that happened. Yeah, this was many years ago. I went back because somebody else, I think the cardiologist said, you need to go to therapy and find a different therapist. So I went back to therapy. And then the same thing, the therapist said, no, 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 just do meditations and do meditation and do go to the psychiatrist. And so I said, well, this sounds like the something that's already happened, and the definition of insanity is keep doing what doesn't work and expecting different results. So let me learn something else.
Like that, Dr. Bigot, because I think it is very, very important for people to understand that sometimes I think when you're grieving, you need to go to somebody who specializes with grief. Because I think for me, I was grieving for my dad for a very long time. I kept going to, I think I went to three. I realized I was still grieving when I was going through a separation. But then I went to three psychologists. I couldn't get what the psychology was trying to do to help me, honestly. But then when I left, that's when now I started using the prayer in the scriptures and fasting. That's when actually I got my deliverance, but I was doing it on my own, but I couldn't get it. They couldn't help me because I realized that I needed, the only thing I needed was to let it go, which I couldn't let it go. It was tough for me because I was really, really close to my dad and living in that life without him. You are like somebody is a father to you or somebody you're very close to them. Whenever if you that person, you can speak to them about anything and all of a sudden they are not there. So it really I was struggling. I went to one therapist and I don't know what happened. We did 10 sessions. I paid for 10 sessions. I still felt the same. And then I went to the second one. I still felt the same. And then I went to the third one. I still felt the same when I left. But when I was doing now the exercises at home, that's when I got it, what they were trying to do, trying to trigger my mind to go into a different, like let it go. So I was like, okay, now I understand. But it was tough. It wasn't easy. So I don't think people who don't specialize with grief, like myself,
Mhm.
I'm studying. I'm a psychologist. I don't think I can help take a client who is grieving. Honestly, I can't.
And
Honestly,
kudos to you for acknowledging that. And
yeah, I don't think I
thankfully
can
more,
because
yeah.
yeah, you need to specialize really for what I went through myself. And studying really psychology now, looking back at the things that we are studying, we don't specialize in grief. There is no
And grief is,
module.
and it's one of those, grief is not only the mind, because therapy, psychology is the study of the mind.
Yeah.
So no wonder that psychologists, unless they have extra training, they are not prepared. Why? Because grief is not a condition of the mind only. Now, it's typically in many cases, some cases doesn't, depend on what happened. But in some cases, it's affected the mind. Grief affected your mind. It's affected your heart more than your mind. It's affected your somatic body, your physical body. So if you only take care of the mind and you don't know how to speak to the heart, there is something, I think there are a few different books talk about the heart language instead of the mind. So this is just one quick example. So anybody here know, everybody almost say know the word sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry this. I'm sorry that. I'm sorry what have you. For some reason, when somebody said I'm sorry, it registers in your mind. It doesn't register very much in your heart. You can feel it if you allow yourself to be very quiet. The word that the heart takes is apology. So this is just an example of using different wordings and different approach. Even the way you say things, some things will take care of your mind, but not your heart. And so it's understandable. It's not that the training is incomplete, because some people sometimes after they went through this, they're like, oh, shouldn't have done this. Why? What have you? What's the point of psychology? There are benefit in there for many different things, but the training in psychology is focused on the mind, and the grief is, and this is why there are more than one way. I incorporated 4 or 5 different way in my coaching to help people with grief: the mind, the body, the energy level, the heart, the movement. The, for some people, I mentioned briefly, we even go where I created something called Dance Away Sadness, which is using movement coaching and music all combined together. But for some people, it's art expression. So this is why you need more than one thing besides just your mind for for when it comes to grief. It needs something that can help your heart release, help your body release. Nowadays, we know about everybody's energy. It's your energetic level release. Otherwise, you are only addressing, a quarter of the whole picture, so to say. And kudos to you. Nowadays, thankfully, more and more. But it's like you said, in my public workshop nowadays, more and more therapists come in, and almost all of them say, it's grief is such a different entity. Most of them call it entity. It's just such a different entity, and many therapists are not, if they don't take the specialized training, they might not be equipped specifically for that.
Yeah, I think it is important because for me, when I look at the process and also listening to you, like when you talk about the grief or how to deal with it, and it has made me realize that actually I think they should be, when someone is grieving, they should go to those people that is specialize with grief, because just because somebody is a psychologist, because I don't remember anywhere like writing an assignment how to deal with it. It's all the mind, but the grief it goes above that. So it's really, really important for people like you to recognize it. If you go to a therapist and you still see that the symptoms are still there and you still not connecting with that therapist, it's not because the therapist is not good, it's because we want that person to help us in the field where they are not qualified. So it's really, really important to
Yeah.
understand what a grief is and stuff, and also try to I don't think I've ever come across a grief coach until I didn't know that there was a grief coach like a specialist until I met you. That's when I've realized actually there is a grief coach. So if anyone out there, guys, please do, if you're grieving, please do get in touch with Dr. Biget. Don't stay in silence because it's really, really, grief can affect a person in so many ways, even in a relationship. Because for me, it was affecting me in every area of my life. I've lost my dad and my stepdad, and those were the people that I was really closest to. Even my mom, you can see that she could feel for me. She was like, this child, how are you going to survive and stuff? So all those things were like, yeah, it's the things that I had to deal with. But in the end, I got it in the end. But at first, I couldn't get it because I was going to the wrong therapist. So, yeah, it's really, really important for somebody to actually recognize the signs and just go through healing. It takes time as well. I know there are some people, they're like, sometimes they're like, why is my grieving so long and stuff? It truly takes time. Whenever, like myself now, when I'm speaking to my dad about my dad, I don't get hurt anymore. It's like I've accepted it. I know he's not going to come back. And I just speak about him with grace. And knowing that is gone.
Yeah.
So I think to get into that place, it takes time. So
Yeah. It's
no,
one
like
thing that it's one thing that I want to, if someone is grieving or your loved one is grieving, I want to clarify something there, because a lot of it's a common misunderstanding with people. You want to give yourself time but not give grief time. And so what Numsa says is correct. It does take time to recover. And this is the other part. Sometimes you go to certain, whether it's therapy or sometimes it's mindset coaching, and they said, okay, you got to decide and move tomorrow, move forward tomorrow. When you come to a grief coach, for instance, people who work with me, people say, but I'm not ready to, I don't know if I really am ready to go, to fully let go, and and this and that. And I said, okay, everybody has their own time. The point is you want to start now. So when you feel you're ready, for two reasons. So you don't feel stuck and you don't end up becoming stuck. And when you feel you're ready, you're really truly able to move forward. But many people has a misunderstanding that to give grief time, give it time, and then time will heal. Time does not heal grief. Time alone does not heal grief. So time alone will actually complicates grief. We talked earlier, grief cumulative and cumulatively destructive. So it over time, something else happens, it just make it worse and worse. Think about it. If time heals grief and trauma, which trauma causes the intense grief, if time heal grief and trauma, there will never be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So for the audience, yes, you want to give yourself the space and the time to receive help and to look for the correct help, but don't say, okay, it's just gonna take time. Over time, I'm just gonna get better. If you're listening to Numsa's story just now, she didn't just sit around during this time. She went to one therapist, 10 session, went to another therapist, So what is it? A year and so or something passes by, and then it still doesn't help. And then she does something else. She does something else. She keep doing something in those time. So it is important to take actions and to do what it takes. Whether you go to therapists, whether you go to a coaching, whether you do something else, and an art therapy or something like that. Numsa keep doing something in those meantime, and yes, it partly because the method that used her, but even when she starts something else that work, yes, it takes a moment to release that, to really to move through and beyond the grief, but she's doing something. It didn't just, I'm just gonna sit there and hope, poof, 2 years later I'll be better.
Yeah, I think it's important when you recognize you are not okay and then seek help is truly, truly important. And also I know there are some people who really like to give advice. Like sometimes, when you, from the beginning, you mentioned that the bitterness, that from grieving to bitterness. My friend did that as well when she was grieving for her mom. And then when I was talking to her, I could feel that now she had gone to bitterness and telling me stories that I have never existed. She had a good relationship with her mom. So I was like, okay. But I was like, I can't give advice here, but I need to let her realize the process of grieving herself. So in the end, she got back on track, the actually grieving thing instead of getting bitter. And then she allowed herself to grieve. So I think it's truly, truly important to recognize those signs and recognize things like changes like appetite, because sometimes it can affect your sleep patterns, mood swings, and things like that. Loss of interest in usual activities as well. And then you just recognize it and just uh, find grief coach. Here's Dr. Bigot. I know that is a process. It does not happen overnight, or you can't blame yourself, but it's a process that your body has to allow yourself to go through it, as long as you're not going to stay too long, and then you move on from it when you let it go. Is the beautiful part of it when you actually look back and let it go. Yeah. Do you have any words of encouragement, Dr. Big? It is 2 o'clock for our
I
audience.
would just say that just know that you're not alone, even if it has been decades or it's been days. Just know you're not alone, and there is help, and therefore there is hope. And if one thing doesn't work, try something else. I have things. I use coaching, but some people say I don't like hearing words. I do something. Thing this means dance away sadness. There is it's usually once a month, the beginning of the month. So like this first Sunday usually. So the on the third. November 3rd, which is the first Sunday, it's every find something that help you in whatever it is. You tried something, it doesn't work. Please know that there is still hope, because there's so many different things out there. Whether it's dancing, whether it's different movement, whether it is different expressions of feelings. Keep looking. There is hope, even if it is something that you've tried this and that before.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Bickett. And also remember to take things in your own pace. We don't compare your pain with other people's pain, because the minute you start compare, the more things get really bad. So just your own pace. Allow yourself to feel the feelings, and just every single day will be different. And also journal those feelings as well. I did journal a lot. Sometimes I go back and read the notes that I wrote. Sometimes I can't recall. I'm like, was this me? It was like completely somebody different, not me. So it's important to journal your notes as well, so you can keep them for your memory. And yeah, if you're watching us from YouTube, guys, please do subscribe to our channel, be part of the family, and share the video. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you may be, just share the video for us. And have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. And go to the website if you're looking for love, or looking to find your own voice, or grieving coach, Dr. Bigot, www.hseia.coach. And for coaching is Let's Talk. Apply for love if you're looking for love. Live with grace, everyone, and God bless. Have a beautiful weekend.